So welcome to episode 21 of the Breaking Bio podcast. 21, who would have ever believed that? Today is Thursday, March 7th, here in the future. And I'm Stephen Hamblin, your host from Sydney, Australia at the University of New South Wales. I'm joined today by some of our usual co-hosts, starting with Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren Reid, a science communicator based in Glasgow in Scotland.
Hi, I'm Morgan Jackson, a PhD student in entomology at the University of Guelph in Canada.
Hi, I'm Tom Heisley. I'm a PhD student in evolutionary biology at the University of Stirling in Scotland.
All right, and we're joined today by a special guest all the way from Texas. We have Heidi.
Hi, I'm Heidi Smith. I'm a postdoc, a new postdoc at UT Austin in behavioral ecology. Very
nice. And you're, well, I just love the fact that I did that too, and I just started. I'm a new postdoc, right? I'm not good at this. I'm a new postdoc.
Yeah. It's sort of this like unclear entity what a postdoc is. Also, like I just defended my thesis at the end of January.
Yeah. Well, I like to think of it as the postdoc insecurity zone. But,
how long does that last?
I'll let you know when it stops. I'm a year and a half in and no sign of abatement. So you're working with Mike Ryan, right?
Yeah. It's a great lab. It's mostly girls right now. We have one other postdoc who's a guy, and then several female graduate students, and we work on swordtail fish, and also I'm working on the Tungara frog.
Yeah, the frogs. Actually, I spoke with Mike during my master's about modeling those frogs, and then, well, my advisor was too busy, and I wasn't confident enough to do it on my own. But it's a really fascinating system.
Yeah, so the male frog makes two noises. He makes a whine and he makes a chuck. I wish Mike Ryan does a really excellent impression of this, but I don't have one. But it was sort of thought that no animal could make these two noises at once, but they found they could in birds. And so they use the whine to attract the females, and then quite possibly the female sort of assesses the male's fitness based on the number of chucks. He uses between like 1 and 6 or 7 chucks to attract the females, or to, gain these females. But so this isn't a complex. The genus is called Physolemus, and this is the only frog in the Physolemus complex that makes these whine plus chuck sort of calls. And the whine is made by this really large larynx, and then the chuck is made by a fibrous mass in the back of the larynx. So a lot of what I'm working on is looking at the genes that are involved in sort of the development of this fibrous mass in this larynx to make the call. So you're taking a frog that we already know a lot about, its behavioral ecology, and stories of like sexual selection and mate selection, and then we're sort of working from the other end, looking at the genes that control this physiological structure that makes the call that enables this sort of paradigm. So yeah. It's a little bit different than stuff that's been done before in the lab, but it uses a lot of, sort of genetics and things like that, and neuro stuff that I'd done for my PhD. Huh. But it's really cool because it's in a frog and not C. elegans. It's fine and well, but I'm really excited to work with frogs.
Has the genome of the Tungara been sequenced, or is it?
No, so that's also what I'm working on. So I'm, writing. I've only been here for a couple weeks now, so I'm writing a lot of like iCook protocols, but we're trying to work on getting the genome done. So that would be really great. And then a lot of what I'll do in the larynx is like RNA-seq stuff. So, yeah.
Well, I'm excited to talk about your research too, but let's start with the fact that you just moved to Texas. So
yeah.
How's that working out for you?
Well, it's Texas, okay, but it is, a liberal blue ray of hope in this sort of really conservative red state. Because I know a lot of people from other places are like, oh my God, Texas, are you really going to Texas? But Austin's like such a rad place. And the day that I moved, well, it's not a day because it took a long time to drive, but when I left New York City, like January 27th maybe, it was 12 degrees. And I left in like my rental minivan with my cat and my hedgehog and my salamanders and my bike and everything else that could fit in there. And I drove.
Your boyfriend.
Yeah, and my boyfriend. Hey, so
Sorry,
I like how he's below the hedgehog, right? You know?
because he can't drive.
Who, the hedgehog?
No. The hedgehog would probably be a better driver than my boyfriend, but no, he cannot drive. And his whole excuse is like, oh, I grew up in Wales and then I went to school in London. You don't need to drive. So I was the one who drove the entire like 1,750 miles or whatever. But when
not going to work in Texas.
Yeah, so when I left, it was 12 degrees, and when I arrived here, it was 74 degrees. And, you know, people from the UK, it's like they haven't seen that much sunlight, right? Like, it was really hard for him, and he was like, oh, like, what is this, you know? This skin
He's not
was
a
just, like,
sparkly
melting
vampire,
off.
was he?
Yeah. He's not as pale as, you know, as he could be, but yeah, 74 degrees in January was pretty nice. I mean, that's unusually warm for here, but yeah, it's nice. The department's really great here. It's a great field. You know, like the Evolutionary Biology Journal Club, I did that for so long because I had nothing like that where I was before. So I was an outsider doing behavior in a non-behavior lab. But now, you know, like I just went to a systematics journal club with David Hillis, you know? Like that's pretty amazing. And there's a behavioral ecology research group, you know, there's all these things going on, so it's a lot of fun. But it's warm and sunny. They have great food. It's cheap compared to New York, which is great for a postdoc.
Yeah, it's the ultimate way to go. Go from the expensive PhD town to the cheap postdoc town.
Yeah.
Probably a lot different going the other way, right, Stephen?
Yes. Yes, it is.
So before we leave the Texas thing, I just have one question. Is everything actually bigger in Texas? We have this kind of problem with baby carrots, so I'm wondering if there's giant carrots in Texas or anything like that.
You know, I did just buy my share in like a farmer's market thing, and I got some massive carrots. Like, I was wishing for baby carrots when I got them. Okay, like I cut up the carrots and I had to cut them again, and so it was like carrot strips, and I was like, there's no such thing as baby carrots. They're just big carrots cut up. And I was really upset thinking like, God, how did I never think of this before? Like, damn you baby carrots, you're a lie. But maybe carrots are bigger here, I don't know.
I see that my plea to avoid the baby carrots topic has fallen on completely deaf ears.
It was completely relevant.
Oh, yeah.
It's a topic everywhere.
It was a great segue.
Yeah, I will tell you that so my boyfriend did come to visit once since I've moved here, and when we went to look for beetles, of course, beetles that live with ants, like holy crap, man! I've seen some bulldog ants in Australia, but like there was some Camponotus that were like the size of my hand. Like he had fire ants all over him, you know, like I feel like that's what feeds his energy. He just keeps going. It's amazing.
Was he just covered in ants and going, I'm so excited! Yes!
he's like, God damn it! God damn it! You know, it's amazing.
I'm sorry, this was in Texas.
Yeah.
All right, I just need to strike something off my place of lists to go.
I thought you don't like insects. I mean, there's no fire ant bites unless you go looking for them, right?
Well, I'm not particularly thrilled about the idea of bathing in them either.
You don't have to bathe in them. I don't know
It's
what.
not like a state requirement.
I don't know.
It's not that your boyfriend is
Texas, get in the fire ant bath.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
There's
come
that.
on, like I'd be surprised.
Like when you go through TSA security at the airport, they're like fire ant bath, and you have to take one of them. To be initiated, you don't know. Yeah.
You know, so my master's advisor, Pete Hurd, he worked with Mike Ryan for his postdoc, and he always said that Austin was this, you know, beacon of shining hope in the middle of Texas. But he also said that the minute you stepped outside of Austin, like you were in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Like there are sometimes commercials on TV for like the bedside shotgun holder, and I thought these things were a joke, but not so much actually.
It's a bit of an overkill for the fire ants, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. There are also, you know, like 80% of the land here is privately owned. So it's kind of weird to go out like looking, you know, for whatever critters. You have to be quite careful because, you know, guns.
Beside the bed in the shotgun holder.
Yeah, I think that's also weird. Like sometimes restaurants, they'll have a sign outside that says like you can't carry concealed weapons in here. And it's sort of, I'm like, God, does there have to be a sign that says that?
Yeah.
Who's carrying a concealed weapon? I just want to know. I just want to know at like other restaurants where you don't have the sign, are there people, you're the waitress dropping off their pancakes and they have a gun in their purse? Like that seems really weird to me.
If you're not allowed to have concealed carry, does that mean you have to just be like, got my piece?
I don't know. I don't know if there's like a gun check outside.
Like for umbrellas. In this country, we have them for umbrellas. Like when you walk into a shop, people start tutting if you've got an umbrella and it's wet and it's dripping all over the shop. And in Texas, we've got that for guns.
Yeah, you have to discharge all the rest of your bullets in the air.
I just like the idea of going out in front of the restaurant and pawing through the bucket of guns, saying, "Oh, where's my shotgun?"
Yeah.
Are you going to be? I wanted to go, read some of your papers in preparation for this, but for the life of me, I can't find your CV anywhere.
I keep it a secret mostly. I don't like people to know what I've been working on next.
But so fill us in a little bit on your background and how
Okay.
you got into this and.
So I'm from like rural Illinois, not Chicago, like the cornfields of Illinois. And I grew up in like a town of 10,000 people, and I went to the University of Illinois and I studied animal science, initially wanting to be a veterinarian like all children. And then you realize that, it's not like those books that you read and, you're not traveling from farm to farm, saving horses and cattle. So I started doing research in undergraduate. And after that, I wasn't really sure. Like, I didn't know that much about research or things like that. And so I worked in a lab. I got a job, actually, at Albert Einstein College of Medicine doing, like, neuro research. And then my lab moved, and so I worked at Columbia in, like, a pretty big neuro lab and applied to graduate school. And so I got my PhD in biological sciences at Columbia. And I worked a lot on sort of the neurogenetics of simple behaviors in C. elegans. And it's a really great model system. And, at that time, to use something powerful like genetics, you really had to use one of the big model systems. But, I actually really like animals and nature and amphibians and things like that. So a couple years into it, I realized that I probably wanted to switch and sort of transition over to ecology. And so I took more classes like that. I went to the ISBE meetings where I avoided you mostly, Steve, and Animal Behavior Society. I know, but that was really good because I went to those meetings like by myself and met all these other people except for Steve, which I got a lot of great advice on. And in the beginning, I thought like no one in behavioral ecology will ever give me a postdoc because this isn't my major field. But apparently, people are really interested in these other like molecular genetics tools. So, that's sort of how I came to be here. And because I was in like a neurogenetics lab, I don't have 8 papers on a non-model organism. So that's why I don't have my CV out there. I have one last experiment to finish, but I have a paper that was submitted a while ago that's a massive paper, like a culmination of all my work.
Nice.
So was your blog a kind of outlet for these frustrations about working on C. elegans when you really wanted to work on something slightly more charismatic?
Yeah, definitely. So I often show this picture of C. elegans. I use videos a lot to look at chemotaxis behaviors. It's like 4 worms that move around a plate quite slow. And whenever I show that slide at like a conference, I always say, charismatic, right? And like most people. But then I realized like everyone who went to my talk also maybe works in like flies or something and like doesn't get it. I think it's funny. I grew up outdoors having like a ton of pets, and like that's what brought me to my interest in science. But there are people in science who are like, yeah, I love biochemistry. That's how I got here. And that's really bizarre to me and gross. No, it's fine. But it doesn't exactly make sense to me.
That's what my girlfriend does, so I agree.
Yeah. I always get really upset with people when they say, you know, if I have like a tank of frogs next to my desk and people are like, that's gross, or is that a reptile? And I'm like, you're a biologist. Like, get your shit together, you know? Like, come on. You should know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what the difference is between a reptile and amphibian, Steve. Come on.
Yeah, I don't really do animals per se.
I don't get that, but it's okay.
Well, I mean, we can trade. You can do the math. I'll go play with the frogs.
I'm not afraid of math. That's the thing. Like, I'm not afraid of math. Sometimes when people ask like modeling questions at talks, I'm like, these people make up this crap, okay? Like,
yeah, we do.
Name it after a band you like, and like, fine, okay, fine. Whatever you need to build yourself up. I'm just kidding. I think
Oh no,
to
frog girl,
question.
we're going at it. Let's do this.
I don't
We're throwing down.
Like,
Except,
I don't want to fight with you because I don't want you to make an R program that's like Heidi's a bitch. You know what I mean? And then people publish in papers and they're like, oh, we use like Markov Heidi's a bitch model to look at stuff. I don't want that.
I'm working on a project just now, and I got the model from this girl that I'm working with, and it has all these things where it's the different starting level of the female like reproductive behavior, and they're either virgin or skank, and there's a shag counter and things like this, and I'm just going through the code going, this is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you put in your own things. Back to your question. So my blog, I think I started it.
That's naturefield.com.
Yeah, .com. So I started writing that sort of maybe out of frustration for these kind of things, because not only do I not work with cool animals, but I also live in New York City, so it's not easy to get outside and find cool things. And yeah, it's a stressful place to live. Like, Columbia is a stressful place to do your degree. And, you know, there are some times when you just have to walk home and try to look out at the river and see some grass, you know.
Do you find often that when you say that you studied animal behaviour, because I did a master's in animal behaviour, and people often say things like, oh, and did you study that to learn more about human behaviour? Like, as if it's like a precursor to understanding our own. And I'm like, hell no. It's like, it's amazing in its own right, but people often think that it's like a precursor to anthropology or something.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. Not even in animal behavior, but in even like molecular things. You know, whatever gene that you're looking at, they're like, oh, are you doing that to understand humans? You're like, well, I say that to get funding, but no. I'm just, you know, like, that's the greatest thing about what we do is like, you're curious about things and you get to go after those questions. But yeah, I think people who want to take animal behavior to relate it to human behavior, I think it's a really delicate line they cross between making it a really anthropogenic look. You know, like, oh, my dog feels sympathy for whatever. Like, your dog's pretty amazing. He probably doesn't feel sympathy at all. He's probably got like a couple other emotions going on. Your dog probably has more advanced emotions than you do. But yeah, and I also don't like when people are like, oh, you study animal behavior? My dog the other day, I was like, no.
When people start conversations with, oh, Lauren, I meant to ask you, my friend's cat is acting, no, I'm not a therapist for your cat, okay?
Yeah, but I think like the science, like baseline science literacy isn't so great. In the United States, I would say in the UK it's better. In the United States it's really low, so when anyone hears anything like you do science, they're like, oh, I read this article about Parkinson's in the paper the other day. They're like, okay.
Was it a frog with Parkinson's?
It's like Parkinson's or a volcano or anything.
So we've kind of covered how you got here, and meandered along the way. But what's next for you? You're gonna be doing your postdoc for a while? Are you planning on continuing into academia? Are you?
So I would like to see myself. I mean, I'll be doing my postdoc for a while, and I'm trying to train myself more in herpetology. But I would like to be in between, sort of like a university and maybe a zoo or museum, doing like a little bit of outreach and public education, but also like mentoring a few grad students and postdocs. Yeah, hopefully we'll see see how it works out. I mean, the job and the job market's great for us, right?
Oh, yeah. It's just amazing. It's like offers are falling out of the sky.
But, yeah, I had this conversation the other day with the other postdoc about everything we do, like your master's, your PhD, your postdoc, everything is to like get you the best possible position, right? Because you always want to make sure you have all these opportunities. But when you get towards the end, it's really like defining your own success. Coming from my PhD at Columbia, I would never want to be a PI at Columbia. First of all, like for my own sanity, I couldn't do that. I like sleeping and having a bit of a life, but I don't think I could function in like that high stress of an environment. And so I've really tried to like define the kind of things that I want in my life, and I do. I really like interacting with the public and even children. I don't dislike children, but I've never considered like teaching or doing outreach. But I do. Yeah, I do an outreach camp for a week in the middle of the woods in like June weather in the Midwest, and it's awesome. The first 3 days of it, I hate it. It's horrible, and I can't believe I've signed up for this. But the last 2 days, I'm like, oh my gosh, these kids are like identifying a frog from its call and, understand habitat fragmentation, and that's pretty amazing. But
Well, now I feel completely inadequate. All right.
I've been signing up for this camp, man. It is crazy.
Yeah.
But everyone.
When I go to the camp, I'm like the size of a small child anyway, so
Small bearded child.
I can have a shave and then it'll be fine.
Me too. Heidi, you and me should set up a business because I work in outreach education, so we should just like do that, run away and get kids to come to the woods and teach them science. That sounds really sinister, but I wasn't meant to.
Yeah, no. There's another girl in my lab who wants to do it.
Do you have candy in that van?
You can try it.
No, we have chocolate.
Yeah. Hey kids, I work with your mom. Who wants to learn about science? That's totally creepy. But yeah,
I'm just gonna loop that clip.
Called Art and Science in the Woods, and some of it are like inner city kids, people that have never touched a frog. You sign up for like a major and a minor, but there are things, like when I was planning for this, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do these projects, I'm going to do like this, activity, things I didn't plan on, because, these are like 8 to 12-year-olds. They're like, how much further? And it's like, we've been walking for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Can you carry my backpack? And things like that. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, no, you need to carry your own things. Like, I make them responsible. For this stuff. And it's so hard, right? So they've got like those big backpacks, like the same size they are. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you have to carry your stuff.
Tough love.
Middle of the day, I take them out to the swamp, and there's like some kid all in black, just kind of blank look on his face. I'm like, oh, this is where a kid paints in my group today. Awesome.
Biology boot camp.
Yeah, no, it totally is. Because, before I went, I thought it was going to be biology boot camp. I'm like, I'm going to get these kids collecting data. Maybe I can write something up from this. But it's not like I know, right? Like, how ambitious. I'm like, I'm going to get some new species records. And on day 2, when the kids are like, can I go, because they all want to go swimming in the pond. The first day, I'm like, only up to your knees. The second day, I'm like, go, get your energy out, One kid was like, can I go swimming in my underwear? I was like, no. I'm not even going to explain that, but no.
So are you going to get to go to Mike's field station down in, is it Panama?
Right. So I won't do field work in Panama, but I'm probably going to go down there for a little bit this summer. And there's a chance I might go to Ecuador to collect another Physalimys species, which would be amazing. So I think he knows, like, that's my trade-off. Like, I do this molecular work, and then you show me some real frogs,
Bribe you with field time.
We have a lot of frogs in the lab, so some of the more like behavioral ecology based experiments that I'll be doing are, I would rather do them in the lab, because that's sort of how I chose my species, by something that you could easily work with in the field, but more easily you could work with in the lab, for environmental perturbations and stuff like this.
Are you going to get to take RoboFrog out for a spin then?
Yeah, how do you know about RoboFrog? We just had a RoboFrog talk last week.
I've got a horrible research crush on Mike stuff. I ran a 10K last year, and during it I could see everyone else putting on their pumping music playlists, and I was going, I have a lecture on Tungara frogs by Mac Ryan.
I mean, he's a great person to have a research crush on, because he's a phenomenal storyteller. He's a great scientist. He doesn't have that ego, you know? He started out and wanted to be a high school science teacher and knew a lot about herps, and they were like, yeah, you should maybe go to grad school. And he really is one of those people that can see, he's an organismal biologist, right? So he can see the genetics and the neuro people, and he doesn't understand it all, but he understands that when you put them together, you get a really holistic, really informative view of this organism. No, I mean, Mike's great. There's one room, there's the computer room where you can go in, and he said so many students, he said so many people do their PhDs, and there are all these bound copies of dissertations, and you're like, wow, this dude has done a lot. But he's really great with sharing information and sharing ideas. And I got a salamander in the mail the other day that I have on my desk, and he was really excited to see it, even though it hides all the time.
It was alive?
Yeah, it's alive.
Who sent a live salamander in the mail? Can you do that?
First class. First class.
Travels better than I do.
Yeah.
So he gets a better meal and has a better seat.
He might. I mean, he did come in an empty plastic milk carton thing, but he's living it up when he got here. Yeah.
No, Mike's a cool guy.
There's a group of aquatic salamanders I'm really interested in, and I'm proposing some work on. It's a really understudied group. They're fully aquatic. It's in the family Sirenidae. So they're fully aquatic. They have no pelvis. They have no back legs. No one's ever seen them mate.
Oh.
They make a click noise. They make a yelp noise. No one knows why. You can dry them up in mud without water. They have lungs and gills, and they can live for 7 years with no food. How cool are you, humans? 7 years. See you later, baby. See you later.
Let those babies die.
7 years. Fine. Yeah, I'm still laughing about Tom listening to You should really come and spend a couple months doing some research here, Tom. Sorry?
I scored a personal best when I did that run as well, so, maybe I'll get fit again.
So creepy and awesome.
Yes. Yes.
Tom, I think that trip would be good for you on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
Get closure.
Yeah, get it out of your system, or just become a full-blown stalker,
Before you get married.
Yeah, before you get married, definitely. This is something.
Before there's no turning back. Yeah.
You need to sort out these feelings.
All right. Well, believe it or not, we've come to the end of our time, and we seem to have finished on Tom's wild oats. So, so I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. But I want to thank Heidi for joining us today, and. If you want to learn more about the podcast, as always, you can see us at breakingbio.com. And thanks for joining us for episode 21. And we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.